Job interviews kind of suck. They're stressful. It's a new thing, meeting new people, and you gotta give a good first impression. So they're stressful, but they really don't have to be that bad. I don't hate them as much as I used to, and I'm gonna give you 5 tips I use to be as prepared as possible for any job interview. The number one problem most people have with job interviews is that they're stressful, and the best way to reduce that stress is to be as prepared as possible. And one way I like to do this is by studying the company beforehand. So if you're interviewing for this company, you should go on their website and just poke around, see what they do, what have they been posting about, what does the company stand for. Companies love to paste their values everywhere. So what do they stand for? What do they do, like actually work-wise in a professional capacity, but also outside of that? Do they like to volunteer in certain communities? Like, do they have special projects that they're really proud of? So research all that sort of stuff, and it'll be easier for you to bring that up in the interview, because interviewers love that sort of stuff. It shows what you're talking about, and you can craft your responses in a way that show you're a good fit for the company. And if you're given the name of your interviewer before the interview, go on LinkedIn, search them up. Like, who cares if it shows that you searched them up? It doesn't matter. Just search them up, read about them. Where did they go to school? How long have they been at this company? What company were they at before? What have they done in their career? And just get all that information. You might be like, oh, like my brother went to that school. You can make a comment about that. Or, you look at their interests at the bottom too. Maybe you guys like the same influencers or same companies or anything. Just find anything that you maybe can ask that person about, because they'll be flattered that you looked into them, and they love to talk about themselves. Who doesn't? So yeah, look into that stuff. It could be a great way to kind of take the spotlight off you and put it on them, especially in the section where they ask you if you have any questions for them. And that leads nicely into tip number 2, which is to ask questions. So in all your research you've done on the company, if you come across anything that you have a question about, write it down. Make a note of it and have it ready for during the interview. Because as much as they're trying to get to know you, you want to get to know the company as well. If you see something that catches your eye and you want to know more about it, write it down. Ask about it during the interview. And regardless, you should have questions. Even if nothing really comes to mind that you're curious about, you should still have questions prepared just to fall back on, because they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? And it's really not a great look if you're like, nope, I'm all good. Like, they want you to interact with them. They want to see you can hold a conversation. So that's all the interview really is. It's just a conversation. So just, go natural. Just if something comes up in your mind during what they're saying, ask a question about it. But if nothing's coming to mind, have those questions prepared to, fall back on just in case. And I wouldn't ask super specific questions about things like compensation and PTO. Personally, I would leave that for once you get a job offer, then you can ask those specific questions. But it's not a great look, especially in a first round interview. That's too soon. Like I said, in general, it's best to just ask, genuine questions, things that you're really interested in about the company. Ask those questions. But if you can't think of any, some ones you could fall back on. Some of my favorites are, what's the culture like here? Are people friends outside of work, or are they mostly just friendly in the office? And lastly, what do people enjoy most about working here? Those are pretty safe answers, and it'll also give you a pretty good indication of what the vibe at the company's like. So definitely use those if you can't think of any on your own. Okay, but even more important than our questions are their questions, and you have to have answers for them. So we've all been in interviews before. They ask you questions, and you gotta come up with an answer on the fly. But you actually don't. You should hopefully have your answers prepared beforehand. Everyone kind of knows what sort of questions get asked in an interview, so you should have an idea of what you're gonna say beforehand. What I like to do is take a big Google Doc and I write a bunch of interview questions. I think of some on my own, I look them up on Google, just a bunch of questions that I think might come up on the interview. And then I just start typing either a full answer for each one, or just a few words, or a story that I would bring up. And that's kind of not your script, because you're not gonna read it word for word. It's just, you write it for peace of mind. Okay, this is the story I'm gonna tell, this is what I'm gonna say. It's not gonna be word for word, because you're gonna have to, adjust it on the fly and, adjust it to the question that they ask. So not word for word, but definitely, a good idea of what you wanna say. And another thing is, a lot of the questions, they're different questions, but they're asking pretty similar things, or a lot of your answers could be used, some overlap, So you could just have specific answers you want to say, and you don't know which question specifically you're gonna answer it to, but you have it there ready. An example of this is when someone asks you what your biggest strength is, or why you would fit in at the company. Both you could say, my leadership I think would make me fit into the company, or my leadership is my biggest strength. or my positive attitude. So like a lot of them can be used for two different questions. So just have a list of things you want to say and just, assign it out to a different question whenever that, a question that's relevant to it comes up. I hope that made sense. I know it's a little confusing, but overall, just have a bunch of questions that you think could come up and answers that you would say to them. Not word for word, just ideas to, have in your mind for whenever they come up, so you're not just, blank. So just keep that in mind. So if you're able to execute steps 1 through 3, step 4 shouldn't be too difficult, and that's to be confident. I know it's hard to be confident sometimes, but if you've done steps 1, 2, and 3, you've studied the company, you've prepared your questions for them, and you've prepared your answers to their questions. You've done a lot of prep work. You should feel good about what you've done. You should feel good about how prepared you are, and be able to go into the interview confident that you're going to put on a good first impression and be able to interact with these people pretty well. But I know despite that, job interviews still can be scary, but just remember, this company's interested in you. They looked at your resume and they thought, this person looks like someone who could fill this role. We want to get to know them better. We want to learn more about their experience. And that's all this job interview is. They're really just going to ask you about your experience and make sure it kind of lines up with what you would be doing in this new role. And they want to get to know you, like, are you a nice person, easygoing? Like, how do you interact with people? How will you interact with clients? All that sort of stuff. So just be, friendly, happy, and positive, and that'll be a really good impression on them. And yeah, stay confident. It's not the end of the world. It's just another interaction with a human. You got this. Oh, and if you already have a job and you're kind of just interviewing at other places, like, keep that in mind. Like, remind yourself, okay, this is not the end of the world. I have a job. If this one doesn't go well, it's okay. I still have another job. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Okay, and tip number 5 is something I kind of just touched on, and that's to stay positive. So whenever you talk about things, try to put a positive spin on it and just stay positive throughout the interview. Even if you talk about negative situations, don't go into too much detail, and always try to put a positive spin on it. If you have to talk about being laid off, just bring it up, talk about it, but also mention, like, I'm excited to look for my next opportunity. I'm trying to use this as a positive to propel forward. If you talk about working with a negative coworker, just mention how much you learned from them about dealing with different personalities. So just always try to put a positive spin on things, because an employer doesn't want to see a negative person walk in and just have a negative viewpoint on everything. That's not what people really want to work with. So stay positive. It'll help make a good first impression, and that's really what employers are looking for. So be positive and keep the mood light. This will help the interview. Remember, your interaction is a positive and pleasant one. Okay, so to summarize it all up, the tips are: study the company, research them, all that sort of stuff. Prepare your questions. What questions do you want to ask them when it's your turn? And then prepare your own answers. Know what you're going to say when they start asking you questions. What was number 4? Be confident. Yes, be confident. You've done steps 1 through 3. You should be confident, and this is just another person you're talking to. It's not the biggest deal in the world. You got this. And then number 5 was be positive. So just keep things light, keep things positive. That will definitely help your chances. If you do all these things, you will be well on your way to conducting a great interview. So stay calm. You got this. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe for more, and yeah, thanks for watching.